Hey yo, it is yours truly, Lamore Decina, aka Mr. Kool Spot, aka the Gator.
So you just gonna shorten it?
Yeah, I think I'm shortening it.
I mean, I was ready for all 10 names
You
at the
want the
same
other
time.
one? AKA the lyrical storyteller, AKA Mr. Man's Own, AKA the Gator.
Dang, you threw some throwbacks in there. Okay, the Bears. I ain't heard that one in a minute, y'all.
We haven't done the Man's Own in a minute.
I know.
But we are here today with my lovely co-host.
Hey, y'all, I'm Free the Poet. Also, like you like to tell y'all, my whole name is
Sharita Freeman.
Sharita Freeman, okay? So welcome. Today's podcast, we're going to be talking about something that is important. It's essential, right? We're going to talk about, does Black equal Democrat? So many times, I think just in our personal families, we've always been taught, if you don't research, right? Yeah. You know, just go straight Democrat. Do a ballot, go straight Democrat. We just had midterm elections. Yeah. Everybody feels differently about voting. Some people feel like it may be rigged, it may be not. But y'all know what we like to do first. We like to lead with facts. Yeah. And then you're feeling second. So let's kind of go into it a little bit. You know we're some baby nerds, okay? So we're gonna talk about it just a little bit, give you a little bit of back history, and then we wanna converse with y'all about it. We want to see what you think.
Yeah. Okay. And you know, we want to first and foremost give a shout out to the Secret Garden. Of course, you guys see the sign behind us. There's a little glare up there, right up in here. But the Secret Garden is where we are located in Raleigh, North Carolina. Okay. Right behind Red Lobster. So y'all come check us out sometime while we have these live events with a live audience.
And we'll get some cheesy biscuits.
And those cheesy biscuits are banging.
Okay.
That ain't a bad idea.
Okay. I'm hungry, look. All right, y'all. By the way, y'all know I like to acknowledge everything. We did jumpstart a little bit late because we were having some technical difficulties, but you know, I've always been told if you got a little adversity that comes, it means you're doing something right. That's right? Yep. So it's something trying to keep the goodness from coming, right? Not when it's too many signs. Right. Guys, okay, but you know, just a little sign every now and again. Right.
Well, even with that being said, because you know, something that we always talk about in the Kool Spot. It's the first step into spirituality is having faith in something, right? So to be excited about something because you have a vision that enters you into the first realm of spirituality. So what a lot of people don't realize, they say, well, why all hell breaks loose, right? In my life, every time I'm trying to do something good, you know, again, we talked about this the last show. Absolutely. A lot of us don't realize, even the Bible says, we do not battle against flesh and blood, but spiritual principalities in high places, right? So if that's the thing, then what we have to be aware of are the spiritual battles that comes with faith or being excited about something. Some people will say, oh, you know what? There's going to always be a demon assigned to every assignment. I don't know if you ever heard that. The church say that a lot, right? The church says a demon assigned in every assignment. And that's true. And the reason being is because you've entered yourself into a new realm that maybe you haven't been aware of. You see what I mean? All of your life. So you jumping into something head first and being excited about it and then being discouraged 2 days later, that's because you faced something that came with that. So every time we have a show, every single time, since the conception of the Kool Spot, every single time, either technical difficulties dealing with technology, or we'll just have a horrible week that leads up to like a build up of just all hell breaking loose that entire week. You know what I'm saying? So it's what we expect at this moment, you know? So we know we're on the right track. Yeah. Some people say, well, if you're being challenged because you're doing something you're not supposed to be doing. That's not always the case.
It's not always. And you got to see the beauty in the storm. You got to see, like, for me, the fact that my child will go on YouTube and go look up our stuff, like, let me see what you and Uncle Leroy talked about. And I'm like, wait a minute. I didn't tell you this episode was for you. Right. But the fact that 10 years old, she's fresh 10. But at the fact at that point at 9, she cared enough to say, let me go look and see what they're talking about. Yeah. It's just, right, she's searching for it. And so when we know what we're bringing to the table, we know what we're responsible for doing. Yeah. So therefore, we're going to act accordingly, okay? We're gonna follow our calling.
That's it.
So let's get into it. Let's get into it. So, hold on one second, because there's a bit of an echo. Give me just one.
Are you getting an echo? Somebody say you getting an echo?
No, I can hear it.
Oh, you get it?
Okay. All right, so let's go ahead and do this. How many of you know that African Americans or Black people, we were originally Republicans?
You know that?
Okay. All right. So it's a known fact. Y'all just learned it.
Okay.
Now I'm gonna tell y'all the truth now. My baby, her history class, They don't play no games. But literally, in preparation for this, it ended up being in her history book, and it ended up aligning that it was talking about, like, one of her questions was, who was the first Republican president? And it was Abraham Lincoln. And then the fact that he was the one that pushed for the freedom of slaves. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. So we're gonna get into this Black Equal Democrat. And we want to let you know before we jumpstart, this isn't just information that we found, okay? Solely. We got some of this information from an article and presentation produced by Comedy Hype that was very spot on. So no, we're not taking credit for all the information in this segment. But we're always gonna give you our opinions, our thoughts, and again, we can't push anybody's opinion, direction, or anything of that nature. It's just to bring forth educational information so we can talk in dialect, okay?
And on top of that, we are not here to sway your way of thinking as far as what you say that you are. You either the Republican, the Democrat, independent, whatever role you choose to follow, that's up to you. We're not here to sway that and change your way of thinking. We're just here to make you think.
We want you to think about it.
We just want to make you think. Have a dialogue. Right. That's all this is about. So I know a lot of people, it's hard for people to talk about stuff like this because their first train of thought is, oh, you trying to get me to become a Republican. We already know what's up with, nah, this isn't that. This isn't that. Be who you are and be free with being who you are, right? But our job is to make you think, because just like a lot of people, even in the faith, that they just say, hey, I'm a believer, but they can't defend themselves as to how and why. I feel like because so I feel like and it's only right that we question everything, right? So we question the reasons why we believe how we believe, because that's our makeup, our structure as human beings. You know, we are products of our environment. You know what I'm saying? And based off of what we've experienced, we take that, we run with it, we build on top of it. You know, line upon line, precept upon precept, a little bit here, a little bit there. So
somebody preaching over here,
right? So I just think that it's important to question all things with an honest effort and be open. You know what I mean? I know. You know, a lot of people in the church gonna say, "I don't talk like that, bro. That ain't good." But question all things. You know what I mean? And be open.
Because if you don't, you'll fall for anything just because someone said it. Because I like this person versus I don't like this other person, so I'm not going to believe them or whatever. So sometimes we have to study for our own understanding, and also so that we're not leading our children astray or the next generation. We're just not telling them something. Well, somebody said this or Big Mama said this, I'm gonna go with it. But rather like, okay, well, no, like, well, you said this and this worked at this time frame, but maybe I need to maneuver another way. So like, let's get into it, okay? So Abraham Lincoln was the first Republican president, and he was considered radical. And at that time, Republicans at that time were the ones who ultimately opposed the institution of slavery as men of business, aka prohibition of the country. Okay. At least that's what Abraham Lincoln and a few of the others in his radical cabinet were pushing at the time. And even though he had slaves of his own who were also considered free men, blacks were still in support of the Republicans. An article entitled "The Republican Party and African Americans: The Real History" by David Greensburg. He states, founded in 1854, the Republican Party promoted African American equality. For its first 2 decades, Abraham Lincoln and the radical Republicans in Congress fought to end slavery and give black men full citizenship. For that much, Bush and the company can claim a worthy lineage. Okay? The formal election of Republican President Abraham Lincoln provided black men at least with some level of social access. The election and the presidency of Abraham Lincoln is the foundation of the relationship between the Republican Party and what? Black people. At the time, the Democrats were in favor of slavery as they were the primary breadwinners of the economy due to the capital created by free labor. All right. So after the victory of
hold on. Y'all got any questions about that? I mean, you guys can follow where this is going, right? You know, and again, we're not here to sway your votes in the future. You know, midterms is already passed and your way of thinking. This is just to make us think. You know what I mean? That's all this is. So we want to give a little bit of history. We're big on histories and facts. So we're here to make you think. All right?
And just in case you're wondering, guys, I'm a liberal. Just saying. Whoever's best, that's who I'm going for, okay? I can't do the straight this way or straight that way.
Independent.
And so
me too,
I just want to jump in there before before we get into like, oh, maybe they're trying to sway this way or that way. No, I think it's good to have the understanding of what the history was, because for so many of us, we've always heard just Democrat, 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 or certain parties just going to our churches. And then that being I associate church. I see the party come when it's voting time, and that's what we're aware of.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
So a little bit further into that, after the victory with the Union Army in the Civil War, we begin to see prominent individuals, Black Republicans, gain power. Perhaps the most famous of the group is none other than Frederick Douglass.
Mm-hmm.
Douglass was a reporter of the Republican Party and had lofty status as an orator and activist during the same time frame of the party's election. Okay? According to the piece entitled Perception of an African American Republican in the Tarrant County, a chaplain, Rich Statlin, Frederick Douglass serves as a confidant to Abraham Lincoln, a confidant. Confidant. But that's not what this says, though.
Well,
I'm just saying. This is a guy's wording, okay? I was like, wait a minute. I know I read what I read, guys, okay? I like reading a lot.
Did I miss the end? Did I miss the you? I missed the you. I missed the you in there. All right, that's. Don't worry about that.
Sorry.
We got it. We know what we're talking about.
Y'all, just like my name, y'all know I'm gonna be free flowing and free spirited. Like I'm gonna laugh at everything because we gotta break it up. But he was a confidant to Abraham Lincoln and was credited by the general public as the reason for any social gains given to African American by Lincoln. So he pretty much bridged that gap for African Americans to be Republicans at that time because they actually cared somewhat about our freedom. Okay. So he famously quoted saying, "I am a Republican, a black-eyed in the wool Republican, and I never intended to belong to any other party than the party of freedom and progress." This overall sentiment was shared with many members of the Black community at the time, a stark contrast from the current perspective we have on Republicans. All right, so there was another rising public figure out of Texas who was in support of the Republican Party by the name of William Madison McDonald. He was the first Black millionaire from Texas, and his big social priorities were the advancement of Blacks, whites, Hispanics, and the dynamic of chronic unemployment. In groundbreaking move, he would go on to open up 4-4's first African American bank in collaboration with the Freemasons.
Yeah.
You want me to continue?
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay. Y'all like my voice? All right, y'all. I'm gonna read too much longer, but we're just trying to get this good backstory so we can have a good dialogue. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So, furthermore, highlighting how beneficial this association between Blacks and Republicans was a quote by Stogman's article states, in 1890, Bill McDonald was appointed county chairman of the Republican Party. Most Blacks were Republican at the time, and in 1892, he was among 120 Black delegates to the Republican National Convention in Minneapolis, Minnesota. In 1894, he was made the state's chairman of the Republican Party. In Texas, time provided that Bill McDonald was a crafty politician, a shrewd businessman, and a believer in self-help. Considering the current political landscape that Blacks have to the Democratic Party, it could be quite surprising to learn that the Republican Party was more responsible in playing more significant roles in the struggle for freedom. Yet this beneficial relationship only lasted for about 10 to 15 years. In the Greensboro article, he states as early as 1876, not 1960, as the Philadelphia commissioner suggested, GOP leaders began to abandon Black Americans. In that year's presidential election, Ohio Republicans Rutherford B. Hayes agreed to withdraw federal troops from the South in exchange for Southern Democratic support, also known as the Compromise of 1877. Democratic seized power in the South and ushered in legislative segregation. This dynamic set the foundation for what we now know as what? The Jim Crow laws in the South, and could be seen as the foundation of the current relationship between the Black community and the Republican Party. Subsequently, Black people began to flee from the northern states, aka the Great Migration from 1910 to 1940, where the Democratic political organizers were set to be more welcoming while Republican parties began to enact heavy segregation. This trend will continue to the 20th century. During the presidency of Franklin D. Roosevelt, the Great Depression was a catastrophic economical period where many Americans were suffering financially. During Roosevelt's term, unfortunately, Blacks were in the worst conditions and received measurable gains as results of political policy signed by Roosevelt. All right. One of those policies was the New Deal. This pointed in further validation of the aforementioned article by Greenberg in the statement saying the black ship to the Democratic Party crystallized on President Franklin D. Roosevelt. Though they won just by 23% of black folks in 1932, he subsequently expanded the support within his relief policies. The Depression affected black Americans disproportionately in programs such as Civilian Conservation Corps and Public Works Administration gave them much needed aid. Okay?
That's one more thing. I like 4 more paragraphs.
You want to jump in paragraph?
Go ahead.
According to the Huffington Post articles, the FDR also desegregated military and other social institutes, which certainly gave him plenty of favor with black voters. The most recent political occurrences that solidified the relationship between blacks, Democrats, and Republicans was in 1964 Civil Rights Bill. An excerpt from the Origins article states the following. The foes of 1964 laws includes the rising of GOP stars as Arizona Senator Barry Goldwater and Texas Senator aspirant and future president, none other than George H.W. Bush. Goldwater and Bush foresaw their future elections succeeding, resting on the Southern and Western conservatives. This statement briefly exemplifies the current perception many blacks have of the Republican Party and their conservative values. Even more obvious examples of political aggression from Republicans were stated in the next passage of the article. In 1964, the presidential bid, Goldwater ran Operation Dixie, which courted Southern whites and seated the black folks entirely. Goldwater lost badly, but 4 years later, the approach worked. Republican Richard Nixon won in 1968 the election on the Southern strategy that stressed law and order and tapped into white anxiety about black violence. This strategy of black voter abandonment and white fear manipulation has been highly effective in years on conservative Republican success. It was during the Civil Rights Movement where the strategy was introduced and when the exact current relationship between the Democrats and African Americans communities came to be. Since then...
So remember back in the 60s when, you had all the riots, you got like the death of Martin Luther King and all of that stuff. And there were like a lot of riots. And I think the media took the hype from the riots to really blow it up. Inflated, right? To cause this, to force this narrative on the communities between blacks and whites. Already, there was still the segregation was still in place, right? That's why the whole civil rights thing was important, the civil rights movement. So what I get out of this part right here in this whole thing is how they manipulated whites against black, even though whites police, the white police and segregation was still a part of society as we knew it back then. They turned it when blacks started rioting and started making a big fuss about how things were going, inflate that caused fear in the white people. Then that caused a bigger segregation between both. And then they were able to take that, twist it, and you'll see as this goes along how they were able to say, well, we're going to start making blacks become Democrats because of what, like who was that they just mentioned? Richard Nixon and Richard Nixon and people like that. That you'll see how they took the information and the strategy and they twisted it to create a narrative of how they got blacks more on the Democratic side, and just the whole thing. So it'll come to a head here.
It almost comes down to being like the lesser of two evils, right? Like no one's coming to save us, quote unquote. So who's being the nicest to us? And that's almost where it became them playing on emotion instead of what the parties rely on. A lot of times we as a community, we are very spiritual. We're very tapped into who we are. And so a lot of times we maneuver off emotion. And I think that party-wise, they maneuver it to say, well, if we can get their emotions here, then maybe we can potentially change what they believe in. Or what they believe.
It's building a trust.
Right.
They have to build a trust with
because it all began based on the group that was pro our freedom. So I would like to bring up the question eventually, do we owe any, any group anything? should we label ourselves as any group?
That's a good question.
Or, you know what I'm saying? Like, you know, of course they quote unquote want you to have some type of affiliation, but should we even go into affiliations? But since then, in the following decades, we have seen the implementation of the Black community automatically voting blue out of tradition. This dynamic has caused plenty of debates in our community on voting out of strategy versus voting based on old, outdated perceptions and from social pressures to do so. In another article entitled "Why So Many Black Voters Are Democrat, Even Though They Aren't Liberal," by Cheryl Leinert and Ismail Wright, they reported on the analyst conduct by the American National Election Study that was aimed on gauging why people voted the way that they do, and the social pressures could be a strong determining factor in voting decisions. The article states the following results from the ANES. Interviewers asked respondents face to face which party did they identify with. When they look at the race of the interviewer and the race of the respondents to see a Black respondent's general answer differently depending on who asked the question. We conducted Black respondents were more likely to report that they were Democrat when they were asked by a Black interviewer. 96.4% than a non-Black interviewer, 83.9% on an online survey, 85% public figures such as Kanye West, Candace Owens, as a few examples, have expressed frustration by what they feel is a blind support for the Democrats and the ones that don't have enough merit. Some feel we should challenge alliances to either side, while others feel our alliance should change merely based on how well each party truly serves our most critical needs every 4 years. Mm-hmm. A growing discussion in the Black community, especially with the election of Trump, is the usage and often the often ignored third-party opinion of running as an independent candidate. So I would like to know, just having everyone thinking about it, like when you go to vote, do you initially, when you first see someone, are you looking at what they identify with party-wise? Or are you looking at what they're saying? So I think like a lot of times they push so hard what party they're affiliated with to get those people that are just going to vote based on their party before they really push the narrative of what they believe. Due to the difficulty of self-financing a campaign, most aspiring politicians choose to decide what one of the two usual party organizations like Bernie Sanders and August King. However, independent candidates, as the name suggests, will have full control and will not have to adhere to any of the rules of either the Republican or the Democrats. Since the inception of this country, we have been trying to find out what is best for us to gain liberty and freedom. Multiple strategies have been implemented with various degrees of progression and results. When it comes to the topics of American politics, there are always going to be passionate discussions surrounding how and if we should use it as a tool. There are many Black people who dismiss the entire political system as a fundamental flaw of American society, meaning that the participation of it has no real effects on Black liberation. You know, there's a part of me that's like, is it rigged? Is it rigged? You know what I'm saying? Now I'm gonna do my due diligence because my ancestors couldn't always vote.
Right.
But there is definitely a part of me that's just like,
I'm with you.
All right. In the same sense, others feel that participating in the two-party system gives us a better vantage point in how problems operate, therefore giving us better ideas on how to find solutions for the problems. Both of these arguments have major merit and make sense to their perception. Maybe it's true that both of them can happen at the same time and be just as effective in their own way. Black people went from being strongly Republican to strongly Democratic. Maybe the next logical step for us is to be strongly independent. Only time will tell. But I feel like our culture, we swing. We either one way or another. I mean, I don't think we've been afforded the opportunity to have a lot of gray space. So I think that's why we're either all in or we all out.
Yeah, and we also go where it's jumping. You know what I mean? Like if everybody's screaming Democrat, then by default, we kind of fall in line. You know what I'm saying? And I think, again, we have to learn to question things. When is it okay where we hold our soul, or when is it okay to take a step back and look at everything as a whole and question these things? Because it's all this is debatable. All of it is, you know. We're not here to debate. We're not here to debate about politics. Yeah, you know, but we're here to make you think. That's the whole objective of today and the topic, you know. And even after this, we're going to go into our next segment here in a second. Well, we want to find out what our core beliefs are, right? So this is fully interactive. We ask the questions, you guys respond, and then we give y'all the definition. Is that cool?
Yeah. We can do that.
Yeah, you know what I mean? Because and I think it's important because I think a lot of Black people really have more conservative views than conservatives. You know what I mean? You know, so I'm like, we don't realize how conservative we are based off of the struggles that we've had in the past. There's a lot of things that we want better of, and we want better for our people. And a lot of those things fall in line of conservative views. You know what I mean? Without calling ourselves conservatives now, you know what I mean? So, you know, and we're going to get there. We're going to get there. So, but yeah, so again, we're not here to sway your votes. We're just here to make you think. We're not here to debate. We're just here to make you think, have a dialogue about this, and just kind of put it out on the table. You know, we believe it. You look ready. You look ready. You look ready. You look ready.
She said, let's go.
She said, let's go.
Right
Let's
now.
do it. Let's do it. All right. So before we get into this, right, I want to lay out some keywords. And these are just some fundamentals. All right. So the first keyword that we're going to lay out, liberals, right? We're going to have some definitions we're going to lay out on the table so we'll know what side is what. All right. So liberals believe in equality and individual liberty, supporting private properties and individual rights, supporting the ideas of limited constitutional government, and recognizing the importance of related values such as pluralism, toleration, autonomy, bodily integrity, and consent. Those are liberals, right? Then you also have your progressives. Your progressives, they say, well, progressives are advancing the rights of every American to retire with with security and dignity, ending poverty and income inequality, and securing a living wage for all people, protecting a fundamental right to organize, ending mass incarceration, and advancing equal justice under the law. So we could already establish when we say Democrat, you want to look at the words liberal and progressives. They kind of go hand in hand. You know what I mean? Which makes up a Democrat for most people. Is how they defined it. So you also have a conservative. Conservatives, they advocate low taxes, free markets, deregulations, privatization, and reduced government spending and government debt. Social conservatives see traditional social values, often rooted in familiarism and religion, as being threatened by secularism and moral relativism, right? The isms aren't guaranteed, so we just they use those really very loose. All right, so those are conservatives. You know, then we also know that in the world of politics, you have a two-party system, right? Two-party systems is a political party system in which two major political parties consistently dominate the political landscape. Those are your two. That's your Republican and Democrat. That's a two-party system. All right. So these are some of the things that we're going to go get into, right? And we're going to start off by asking these questions to you guys and kind of get to what your response is going to be. And then we can gauge that, and then we'll get into our core and the meat of all of this. All right. So how many people were born Democrat? I think did we start off with that already?
No, we brought it up about it being in our community, but do we feel like as a whole, like most people are born Democrat in our community?
Yeah. Are most people in the Black community born?
You would say so? You think so?
Okay. How about everybody in this room?
I will say yeah, but at the same time, when it was time for me to start voting, my family would always push Democrat. And I stay in a very rural area, so the Republican people wouldn't be out there, but like we had to vote in the fire department, the local fire department in Warrenton on election day. And all you see out there is like the Democratic card of everybody who they want to vote for. Right. So it's almost like pushing the agenda to vote Democrat. However, and I'm pretty sure I'm arriving a little late, but I would imagine that y'all talked about at one point in time, quote unquote slaves were free.
That's exactly what we talked about.
So it's like, but I've been watching some documentaries through History Channel, and come to find out, I think the swing happened when JFK got MLK out of jail, and I think from that point on, it was more more the norm for blacks to vote Democrat after that situation, right? Because JFK kind of saw,
that's good,
and even like from the stats wise, they was talking about how Joe Biden didn't lose that many seats, and the last time that ever happened, I think it was like JFK era, right before he got assassinated, he didn't lose that many seats when the midterms came.
Right.
So there's just like an indication showing that like, because of maybe it was because of the MLK thing that he got popular from, like he got that black vote from that.
Yeah.
And in a lot of ways, that might can be like almost a death sentence for candidates, like, because I mean, when you go back, I know it's like a long answer. But
No,
go back
go
to the
ahead.
1960s, it seemed like it was something progressive really going on in the black community, but it seemed like everyone that was pro black community got assassinated in that era. I mean, I'm not really sure how deep JFK roots go into like the pro black, but however, my grandmother loved him.
Right.
My great grandmother loved him. So that's an indication of like, okay, handsome
he was
dude,
something strong,
talk well. Those are So he even like sometimes his demeanor kind of came off as what they would call like the hip hop type of style. You go back watching old videos, he kind of came back like kind of hip.
Yeah.
So I just kind of feel like with the Democrats, it just seems like those are the type of candidates that they aim for, somebody that has some level of relatability to the black community.
The relatability.
Yeah. So I can't really say that people are born Democrat, but I just remember turning 18 in 2006.
That first election,
my family was like, nah,
you know what to do.
Turn the Democrat votes up. Yeah. And that can be like a racial thing too, because I feel like the Democrats aim to get that vote too. So like I said, once again, that's
know how to do it.
Yeah, like I said, I can't say for sure that people are born Democrat, and I'm not really sure outside of like the MLK being released from jail from JFK if that whether or not was a turning point. But it seems like that's been like an ongoing thing for a while, and it's also like a nucleus of people who like feel, why keep voting for the same party when on the outside it's like they're not doing anything for us when they get our votes too.
That's right.
So, absolutely.
Yeah, and that might and that can go into the whole master and slave mentality thing too.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
But again, it was almost like a potentially going with who is going to save us.
Right.
And nobody's going to save us. But when the Republicans dropped us off, like, well, we're going to go with this narrative to try to go with those that are scared to encounter black people. So we're trying to go for these conservative votes. And the Democratic Party was like, well, we got to pick them up. Let's go.
Right.
Come on. So maybe it's sheep herding.
Yep.
So maybe it's a herding type of process as well.
Right.
And will the independent party ever truly win? Is it going to be enough people to go independent for that party to ever truly gain those seats?
Right. Yeah. Can I add? Oh, go ahead. I'm sorry. Go ahead. Do your thing.
I was going to say something I don't think we talk about a lot, that I've thought about a lot and was confirmed for me as I read Robert Greene's book, The Law of Human Nature.
Okay.
One of the things he talks about in that book and through his research is the innate desire of human beings to belong. You have to, we all aspire and seek to belong and attach ourselves to other people, other things, and other causes.
Yeah.
Okay? Thus, you have something like a two-party democratic system where somebody is forcing you to choose a side.
Right.
And because of our innate desire to want to be attached to something, to a community, I often call it a tribe, right? Or a community or a family, because that's really where it starts in my mind and what is the root of it. And even when you get into that space, if you have a thought that is different, then you have to be strong enough within yourself to be able to roll with the group on what makes sense, but also be able to stand individually within the group and assert your ideas. And the word assert is not the negative connotation that we always get. It's not always that, but to say, hey, here's a different perspective group of people who I love and who I want to assimilate and be a part of. And so when we think about that, if we don't keep bringing it backwards, I feel like the conversation always starts at what party do you follow? The conversation rarely starts, what are you doing at home?
Right.
Because before you even get to voting, if we're not producing strong families that have strong parents that work together, that create generational families, not just everybody sort of doing their own thing, a collectivism, which means we all have a core idea of beliefs and thoughts and movement and going in a very specific direction. Until you build that generationally where the path is clear, especially for Black people, then it doesn't matter who we vote for individually, in my opinion. Because to bring it, even when you put that person in power, when you go back and you're still not doing the things in your everyday life and in your family's lives and in your children's lives and in your grandma's life and in your great grandma's life and in the future generations, then what is that person there for? What are they there for? What are they really going to accomplish? That's the power of collectivism. When we are collective as a people, because you start out as family units that can then build and build and build on different family units. That is where the power is. And that's what the Republican Party and Caucasian people have done really well, whether we want to acknowledge it or not. They know how to fight for what belongs to them.
They're going to take it. They're like, this is my born right.
If you really look at the core of what it is that they're doing, it's really what all people want.
It's what all
But they're doing it, and it stays within their group of people.
They don't expand it.
If we all started doing that, and if we all started, let's just say, voting Republican based on where Republicans are now, like this thing about Black people buying life insurance, this is the coldest thing I ever heard. If more Black people started insuring themselves, and especially Black men with life insurance, they would stop killing us. Because somebody would have to pay off those policies. Who owns those policies? Who owns them? It's not us. It's them. We could potentially bankrupt that.
You're right.
And if we knew what to do with the money, because we had collective family, collective generational wealth, collective vision and goal towards a specific direction, Black people would be unstoppable. It's a vision I live in my head, that lives rent-free in my head every day. It lives rent-free. And so I seldom don't take part in political conversations, even though I love to do them, because I realize that I have a very different thought mentality. And I am alone in this boat at the moment. I am alone in the boat in the thought of where I'm going. If we could do that, there would be such a huge turnaround for ourselves and our cultures and our families until we stop fighting internally, but are willing to yell at each other about who you did or didn't vote for. Nothing will change for us.
I seen this quote. It was like, separations for the weak, unities for the strong, and it starts to really make sense.
That's real.
It makes a lot of sense. It makes a lot of sense.
So at this point, being that these are the things that we know we're acknowledging, right? So this hold on.
We want to stand up. Go ahead, Free.
No. Go back.
I wanted to add something to the sister what she was saying about Robert Greene. When I discovered him about a few years back, and of course he has a book called The 48 Laws of Power. So I kind of want to kind of connect the two, because it's a couple people I watch on YouTube, and they said something about the colors of red and blue is in Egypt, like it's been on the walls. So before I get to the red and blue side, because I actually want to personally ask questions to everyone in here about like why those colors. But I want to go back to Robert Greene, and Robert Greene states his 47th law of power, which is something I practice to this day, is don't go beyond the initial mark of victory. Because long before you know it, you can end up losing. I think that's what Tom Brady is going through right now. He violated the 47th law, and now he's losing everything. They're not really in playoff contention. His team, even though they have like whatever they have on the team, but I'm looking at it like, oh wow, like bro, you won already. Why keep going?
Yeah.
You know, and that might be like on some athlete stuff, but at the same time, like, you know, it's competitive. It just like, you know, so it's like, if you know you've won, if you reach a certain mark that no one else has reached, why keep going?
Yeah.
Like, eventually you got to choose the personal.
Yeah.
So, and sometimes I look at it from the Democratic side of when they get the black vote, they get it, but they don't go beyond the initial mark of victory. Like, y'all served y'all purpose.
We're
y'all
done.
got us in the seats.
Yeah.
We don't want to do no more else for y'all. We'll do
it.
everything for everyone else except for y'all. So,
or maybe because they know we're not going to demand for them.
Right. And that's
because it takes more from us.
Right. Yeah. And I also wanted to add to that too. Because I don't even know. Well, definitely like I'm gonna probably leave here and do some more investigation on it. Why red and blue? Because even from a football standpoint, the Cowboys are blue. Well, it used to be the Redskins and the Commanders are red.
Yeah.
Even Bloods and Crips are blue.
Yeah.
Then the Democratic Party.
I think
blue.
they're power colors.
Yeah.
Right. So it's like
something with.
So I always feel like. Right, even throughout history, these colors are very synonymous with going against each other. So I always just wanted to ask of if y'all knew why those colors. Like it always seems to be those particular colors. And I know sometimes for colors, you know, like the combination of red and yellow can entice hunger. That's why Burger King, McDonald's, Wendy's, all of them have
it's
red
the cheese.
and yellow.
It's the yellow to be making you look hungry.
And I know like colors, like even if you close your eyes and think about certain things, you will think of certain colors depending on the emotion that you're feeling.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
You know, so I just always wondered like what agenda exactly is behind that. Like I mean, and and that's like royalty. So
royalty,
so
red is fire.
Blue is calm.
Heat and blue is calm.
Hot and cold.
So
it's like chaos and control.
That's
control.
Yeah.
Very much what it is.
Yeah, because usually like from an officiating standpoint, it resembles a color blue, like police. You know, even like some medical fields. However, like chaos, urgent care, red. You know, there's a lot of that. Emergency is red. So I just always wonder. I mean, I don't personally know the answers to that, but I have noticed that like it's very synonymous in history.
That's true.
You know,
that is true.
Yeah.
Wow.
Do y'all know that the colors are technically considered unofficial party colors?
I didn't know.
I don't think they've ever officially. So I started researching while we was here. I was over here like, keep talking. I'm about to research, and it was like these are unofficial colors.
Right. That's good to know.
Unofficial?
It is.
It's good to know.
Okay.
It's really good to know.
Because even what the elephant symbolism for like Republicanism, whatever, that's both. It's still red and blue though.
Yeah.
It is. Yeah. So
colors definitely have a trick on our minds as well.
Right.
Moves, like you said.
Yeah, and that can go back to the whole tribalism thing,
Yes.
even gang mentality.
mentality.
It connects a lot of different dots. You know,
It's nothing but organized gang.
Right,
Yes.
right.
System.
So it's so it's kind of, I feel like if you get to the source of the root, you kind of have more and better understanding. Yeah, but I guess it's like a micro and macro perspective. Because I mean, I've heard the spectrum for me. Like I worked in a lot of different places. I'm not voting for nobody but Jesus.
Right.
And I also heard like, we gotta go out here and vote and be proactive in our own communities and societies. So it's just like, you know, that disillusion that y'all are kind of communicating towards, like, and what she was saying too. Like it's like that's very, very real.
Yeah, we have to talk about it.
We want them to fix what we continue to create and perpetuate.
Right.
That's my biggest thing. Stop expecting them to fix what we create and perpetuate. And sometimes we create and perpetuate because omission is still guilt. If you do nothing about it,
that's true.
You are still part of the problem.
That's right. That's
So therefore, if you don't vote,
you
know, I feel sometimes on my own that it might not be worth it. No, I'm serious, but I'm still always going to vote. Okay. But if we don't do something about it, like doing nothing about it will never change. Will never make a change. So everything has to be an action.
Yeah. But they say that I heard somebody say a non-decision is still a decision. You know what I'm saying? So you choosing to do nothing is still a decision. You made that choice to not do it.
Right. And you know what? I think a lot of times in our community, we like to use it when it's convenient. If a person sees a racial incident occurring and they do nothing, like, how dare you sit there and do nothing? But something else that occurs, we're like, oh, well, that ain't none of my business. That doesn't concern me. That doesn't directly affect me. And so we can't pick and choose when we say, hey, you should be subject to do something. You should always do something if it's within your
Yeah, always.
Very biased.
And then the challenge is, depending on the nature of it, I want to go home alive to my family.
Yeah, that too. Yeah.
So we have that dynamic as Black people that other cultures don't have.
They don't have that stress.
And so again, not to make an excuse,
That's the question.
but me making a choice not to take an action might not be about me not wanting to help another person who is in danger.
Right.
It's about me wanting to go home to my family, because for me, I am my family.
Yeah.
I am all my children have. There is nothing. If something happens to me, it crumbles. That's the reality of me, right? So I am very, very meticulous about the decisions that I make. And she said something that I love. Sometimes I ask God for the spirit to shut up.
Oops, she said that earlier.
I have.
And
it works.
My willingness to be vocal is my strength, and it's both my weakness. It is my kryptonite, and it is what I don't know what the other part of Superman had. It's my superwoman strength, right? And I'm constantly working to balance when I need to do that, because I am, as a former New Yorker, even though I've been here a long time, I'm quick to sort of even now want to do something, even though that reaction is a little bit slower because I've been in the South so long. Because I recognize that often what I say, even though it may be right, it's not going to be well received.
Right.
On top of, again, in certain circumstances, is it going to allow me to go home safely to my children who depend on me? Right? And so that we have that dynamic that other, again, communities don't. And how do we do that? And how do we remain safe? So there's certain things that I always travel with. There's certain things that now that, once my daughter got her license and she drives, I say, keep this in your car. Now that I'm teaching my son to drive, and when I bought his car, I put this same thing in his car. There's one in all the cars that I'm responsible for in my house. And then there are other things that I just carry innately because, I know as a Black woman, I'm not going down without a fight. And it sort of gets us off track. But the point that I'm trying to make to connect it is the fight is bigger than making a vote and leaving it in someone else's hands.
Absolutely.
When you put it in their hands, again, what are we doing to feed into the expectation? And I'm always going to go to this. It goes back to what you were doing at home. If you make 50-11 babies with 50-11 women and you take care of 0, you are the problem. But you stand on the corner screaming at people to vote. If you make 50 million babies with 50 million dudes, you are the problem.
Absolutely.
You chose to go out here and keep making the same mistake. And now you got to depend on the system, and you're not really being a contributor in a way that you should be a contributor. Right? And then you're blaming everybody else for the problem, and you're sitting at home. But you want this man to do something to make it easy for you to sit in the house and make babies, or you wanted to make it easy to tell that woman, "Oh, go give to social services because y'all women the man can give it to y'all. They don't want the man in the house." Both of y'all doing two stupid things. That don't make any sense. And that does not feed into creating the kind of atmosphere that will allow us to make progress.
So I have two questions. One comment that was given by Vanessa. Hey, sis. She says, "What are we demanding from people that we're voting for? What are we demanding?" And my question is it going to take a modern day martyr to know that they're sacrificing their entire selves to fix it? Because if we have someone, because what I feel is that sometimes we have to idolize somebody as a community. And sometimes it's after they pass. It's not right. But I think like MLK, Malcolm X, those are people that sometimes we idolize, and maybe we didn't even like them in the time frame that they were here until after they passed. But it seemed like they made the biggest impact after they passed for us to be like, we're gonna be unified in this, and this. Like, because we are so divided, because there is such a lack of trust amongst ourselves. So how do we bridge that gap to force other people to do right by us?
That's a good point.
That is a very good point.
No, go ahead.
No,
You've been wanting to say something.
But
it's
like y'all,
go ahead. You got it.
I don't want to throw it off.
I got the feeling to me you're gonna probably have
bring it back around. Go ahead.
Because I just wanted to say, unless you ready.
No, go ahead.
I just wanted to say, because like as a young Black man coming from a rural area that does quite a lot in my community, one of the people who I looked up to, even though we're relatively the same age before he passed, was Nipsey Hussle. You know, so when he passed, you know, I thought to myself, are other people like me, or other young black men like me, are afraid to be that quote unquote martyr? Because it shows like, okay, he came from this environment. He did what he did. He got his mind right. Helped his children out, did what he had to do for his children, for his woman, whoever, his family, and gave back to the community, and he still got killed by someone in his community.
Right, because he refused to leave the community.
So it's almost like, what type of, you know, interpretation that give to the quote unquote person who wants to do that. And I know for me, I had to take a couple steps back because I was so affected by it, because I used to listen to him all the time, and even got to the point it was even beyond music. Like I really love dude. I was heavily affected by his passing. So I just kind of feel like, you know, in those communities where the young black man wants to do those things, or not even just young black, just a young good person in general spirit. How does that make them feel? Like, do they feel more fearful? They kind of step out there when sometimes maybe their community may show their love in a different way. You know, and I put love in quotations, but
are we divided because we're scared?
It just made me think of we used to brought the whole martyr thing with the tape that we'd have had a few of them.
Okay. But I would say, I like my little saying I say is like, although we are different, we are not divided. I like to say that. Also,
can you explain that? Although we're different, we're not divided.
Although we are different, as in our self form is different. It may look different, but we are not divided as people, because cause and effect, we all, like you just said, like cause and effect, we are all united in some way, shape, or form.
The law of oneness, the law of oneness.
Yes.
Universal laws and principles. I'm with you.
Okay.
I got you.
Now, you said something about, so my mom said something to me, because it's crazy, because even when I was younger, I used to always say, like, I'm going to be an activist. Like, I used to be so, like,
adamant about it.
Yes, adamant. Like, I'm going to fight for my people. And my mom used to just, you don't want to do that. You don't want to do that. You don't want to do that. And then she said something to me maybe 2 weeks ago, and I was able to respond differently. She said, you know that, well, you know, with great power comes with great responsibilities. Now, she's like, I hope you know that once you step out, you have to be willing to die. And for the first time in forever, I felt in my soul, I said, this body is temporary. I have accepted that. So it's like, now it's to a point where I know who I am. I've accepted who I am, and I've accepted the purpose of my life. Wow. So it's like, yes, I am. I'm okay with that. Like last night, I made a something on Facebook. I told them, like, this is temporary, and I'm okay with that. And once you accept that, it's so much more that comes out of that. It's so much more that comes out of that. Like, it's just a strive. I can't fight it.
Because it releases fear.
It does.
And it does.
Once you're no longer fearful,
and
then there's nothing that you won't go for. There's nothing you won't try. There's nothing you won't push past, because it's the fear of, well, what if something happens to me, or the fear of, if I do this, they're going to judge me, or the fear of,
or they bring up what you used to do.
Right, or what if it goes right, right? Because some of us are scared. Some of us are so used to things not working. It's a fear if it goes right. Then what?
You're absolutely
limitless
right about
expectations.
That.
Right. And truly going in that. So if we were to, so let me ask you a question on the political standpoint, right? And more of us were to step out and be okay knowing, hey, these first 3-4 times I run, I'm gonna fail potentially. And it's not a failure. It might be a failure in somebody's eyes, right? It's a failure because I'm not winning, but it's a gain in the fact that people will look and say, you know what? Wait a minute. Hold on. They're talking about something different. Remember, we had this conversation about politics, and it was something else. And this was years ago. And I was saying, like, I never ever saw myself thinking I ever wanted to be a politician, or I ever wanted to go into it, because I just really wasn't that amused by it. But when you start looking at, like, the grassroots ways that you can become involved, and how you get on these communities and stuff, and you're like, wait a minute. Y'all have a little bit of say so. Like, all right, why it's smaller things, until we start looking at those smaller things, those bigger things, sometimes it's so much to look at it and say, well, I don't know how to really research this person, right? The internet is it's a playground. Like you can find good stuff, right stuff, wrong stuff, but to start researching and figuring out how these positions work, what they require. Do we have to? Is that the next step for us to individually step up to start doing these roles so that our community can learn and not have a fear of what we may not be used to, so that we can start having those changes, so that we can be unified, so that we can say, hey, it's okay for us not to just say, well, what go on in this house, but to say this house, that house, and that house, we got to start being accountable for each other.
Yeah.
It's the group pull. It's back to Robert Greene. It's
Yes.
the group pull. It's creating the dynamic of the group pull, but making sure, because what will tend to happen in the example that he gave in this particular chapter when he talked about it, if the group, if one person in the group becomes, and I'm using this term because I can't remember exactly what he said, becomes too radical, then one person will try to rise up out the group and assert their own individual ideology that's rooted in why the group was started, but it takes a turn. And in the example that he gave about how this thing can spiral and often spirals negatively is that people will take the idea and the original purpose of the group and it'll turn and spin very quickly into something negative to the tune where people will kill in a situation where they wouldn't normally kill because it becomes this crazy mental, emotional kind of dynamic, right? And how do we sort of constantly level set all of that, but so that the group still does what they initially came together to do, but still within the group foster individuality of thought, because that is where the growth happens. It is the group collective on an idea and a direction, but using the various thoughts of people being individuals to say, how can we collectively move this forward without it getting out of hand in a negative way? And that is what is a challenge with humans and the innateness of who we are. And if you want to take it biblical, then I guess you could say the sinful imperfect part of us sort of takes over, and it can become this sort of massive evil, and then one person becomes idolized in the group and people follow that person blindly. And then the whole original mission of the group somehow gets lost.
When you said that, I immediately thought about the church. I thought about how there are different roles in the church and how we all play a position. And when someone feels a little too high, like the reason why you have church conferences and you have to say, no, we're not doing this, or we're going this way, but not this way, your checks and balances. So it sounds like we have to have adequate checks and balances that sometimes we don't think about.
So you don't feel as if it's like perspective takes a part in that? Because I feel like the person that's on the, I'm not gonna say this, the person that's being idolized, are they giving other people the ability of perspective? Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, are they?
They ultimately take that away. And just by the nature of people, you're always going to have stronger people and weaker people in a group dynamic. You just always are. Some of that is experience, right? And some of that is just innately personality. It's nature versus nurture. And so regardless of that, which is why I never sort of, it doesn't sit well with me an idea of having, like, to use your example of a church, a very large church where there's one person who is the end all be all, and he's the one you see all the time, most of the time, 99% of the time. You hear that are there these other ministers, but you rarely see them. You don't know who they are, because you begin to idolize and worship this one person. And then if there are weak enough people in the group who don't know how to stand up for their own thoughts and feelings in the group, then they will continue to put this person on a pedestal, and whatever they say goes, and they will then start to do things that they wouldn't normally do, is his point, right? They will do these insane, crazy things, because he talked about this whole regime in, I forget where it was, in an Asian country where the students took over a school, and it was political party related. This was a middle school. These kids were killing other kids, right? To the tune of initially a political divide, killing teachers, flogging teachers, torturing teachers. He's really showing, which is how I like, he has a story for every single aspect of human nature he talks about how it can get out of control. And then how do we then, now that we know how it gets out of control by these big examples, how do we now try to combat that? Because it takes individual work. And I think we talked about this on your last show. People have to be very, very introspective. And then we have to understand that people have different personality nuances. But how do you balance those? If you know, I know I'm a much stronger minded person, right? How do I balance that? My biggest thing for me, for example, right now, my daughter is extremely demure. I had this conversation with her when she called me this morning about something that she wanted mom's advice about. And the one thing I reminded her is, I said, I know what my personality is. Call it dollface. I said, I know what my personality is, dollface. I don't want you to feel like I'm superimposing that or pushing that on you.
Right.
And that's a constant thing that I have to tell myself and that I have to say to her, because innately of her personality, and then me as a mom, as a protector, right? And it could seem like I'm doing too much and I could overwhelm her. And then that squashes her ability to come out and say what she needs to say. It's on me to recognize that. And if people don't and control that negative side of ego in them, it gets out of control.
So for the sake of time, let's bring this back around, because we have a second segment. But everybody's very opinionated here, so that's good. And that's going to help out with this second segment, right?
Absolutely.
Because a lot of what you guys hit on, we're going to actually ask the question and kind of get down to the very roots of it to see, okay, who's more on the lines of trying to resolve this, and who's more on the lines of just saying, it's what it is. You know what I'm saying? So let's look at a few questions we're going to go over. I'm going to ask you guys this first. 3 first questions. What are your thoughts on gun violence in the Black community? Well, let's just say it like this. What are your top concerns as Black Democrats, right, in the Black communities? As a Black Democrat, what are some of the top concerns?
What do we think the top concerns would be
in the Black community?
That's a good one.
Broken homes.
What's that?
Broken
homes. Okay. What's another one?
I'm going to go back to what I always go back to. It's a gang mentality, and gang mentality is a sense of belonging.
Okay, sense of belonging. Yes. Okay, that's good.
There is no sense of belonging, and to understand, especially as a man, since gun violence is more directly related, right, to men being the bearer of that, they're looking for a sense of belonging, community, and acceptance. There is, even when a single mom is trying, you cannot give a child everything, especially a man child.
That's right.
You cannot. So no matter how much you try to make him belong, we want to belong most to what we identify with most, and that starts first with gender identity.
Okay. That's good. That's good. That's good. So some of the ones that I had here in my research, I found out that gun violence was one of them.
Absolutely.
The economy is another one.
Absolutely.
Criminal justice reform. That's the third one, right? So what we're going to go over here are these questions here. How does the Black voters feel about the economy? How does the Black voter feel about gun violence, criminal justice reform, health care, military, marriage, and abortions? So,
well, that was a lot.
So we're gonna and because we have Travis here, he's our headliner doing the poetry. He's gonna close us out with like 20 minutes. We're gonna try to keep this 20 minutes from now, because it's 2:20 right now. Okay. So that may give you the last 20 minutes of the show. You close us out with your 20 minutes. Okay. All right. So she said, "Don't call me. Don't call me."
Man. She's like, go ahead and touch it if you want to. Dip your toe in that water.
I mean, all right. So let me start off like this, and I want to give you guys some backdrop. All right. So the differences between Republicans and Democrats, right? We're going to look at the logos first. This doesn't quite answer the question about the colors, between the two, or the red and blue, right? But this kind of addresses just the logo, just some research. All right. So it says the Democrats represents themselves with the donkey logo, which originated back in 1828 during the presidential campaign of Democrat Andrew Jackson. Andrew Jackson decided to use the image of a strong-willed animal on his campaign posters, and that's where the donkey comes from, right? Republicans are represented by the elephant logo, which originated during the Civil War when the first Republican, Abraham Lincoln, was elected to the White House. The phrase "seeing the elephant" was an expression used by soldiers' ideals, right? All right, so let's look at some ideals real quick, just some foundational differences between the two, right? So ideals, the Democratic Party believes in a strong government in which the government has a more progressive approach to helping citizens of the United States. They're typically more liberal in their views of the rights of citizens. Republican Party, however, pushes for a more limited and less controlling government. They take a more conservative approach to most rights of citizens. They promote citizens' individual rights to choose the economy, more of a privatized approach instead of a public approach, right? All right, so the first question is this. How do you guys feel? Let's go with the first question about the economy, right? So how did I phrase the question, Free?
Would you like me to repeat it?
Yes, please.
All right. How do Black voters feel about the economy?
Yes.
How do we feel like a Black Democrat would feel versus a Black Republican?
Or just a Black voter. And then we can kind of see which side you're on after your answer.
Oh, yeah, because I got the answers, guys. Sorry, y'all.
We got the answers. All right, so yeah. We got the answer, Sway. All right, well, let's.
Like, what's your personal thing?
I'm gonna let you go last.
Because she gonna bring it home.
Yeah. So we'll start over here.
I wanna go.
You don't want to go?
You got me over here
Like, what are your thoughts about the economy as a Black voter?
I can put this down. I got an opinion.
You got an opinion? Go
So
ahead.
I feel like economy-wise, I want, when it comes to taxes, when it comes to things of those nature, it seems like the more you make, the more you're taxed. And what's considered minimum wage and a living wage is not realistic. I don't know. And granted, I know there are people that are able to survive off 30, 40,000 without public assistance, but a lot of them receive public assistance.
Right.
So when you get to the point that you're doubling that and you're like, oh, you're making good money. Wait a minute. But have you seen inflation? Have you seen what rent looks like? I mean, paying $1,600 and $1,700 in rent. By the time I paid that, did I really bring home what I thought I brought home? Because now I'm scraping the barrel and I'm barely making it, or it's taking a lot for me to put food on the table, or it's taking having multiple jobs, multiple streams of income. So as a voter, I'm looking to see who's going to aid in me paying less to the government, because I only have one child, so I've never been the person that's like, oh, I got this fat refund check coming when taxes come. I get mad when tax time come around. I'm like, how much am I owe? I don't think I got a refund check. It's been a long time, guys. Okay, but I mean, just seriously feeling like I want to feel like I'm contributing, doing my part, but I want to feel like I can survive as well. And right now, I feel very head above water.
That's good. That's good. I feel like the higher you make, you shouldn't have to pay more taxes. You should not. You know what I mean? That's just me. I feel like, so this is me, right? Because
so the billionaire pays nothing?
Well, I'm saying you shouldn't have to pay more than somebody. It should be equal across the board. That's how I feel. Because if you work to earn, considering the income, right? You said percentage.
Now I'm with the percentage of income.
I do not agree with that.
Okay.
Because a billionaire paying the same amount that I'm paying, and I'm making $675.
But the billionaire. But how is it not fair? Because hold on, let me say this. How is it not fair when the billionaire earned his income?
How you know he earned it? How you know it wasn't generational wealth?
Well, even still,
it's still almost not giving that person that makes $675 a way to make it without some type of leniency, because everybody doesn't want to receive public assistance, right? So if I'm fighting, and I'm sorry you grew up with a silver spoon in your mouth, us paying the same amount of taxes isn't fair. Because how am I supposed to get to your stature or get to that status eventually? If there's not something that makes the playing field somewhat even, it's never going to be even. Right.
So how does
we're paying the same amount of taxes? It's still like this.
Right. But how do you make it even with a millionaire? If you're not a millionaire, but you want to be on the same playing field as a millionaire.
Percentage of income.
Okay. So explain.
She will give me all my key terms.
Yeah, she is.
Because this is what percentage of income does.
Okay.
Percentage is a fixed number in of itself by itself. While everybody's pay varies, 1%. If you make $1 million and I make $50,000 a year, 10% of your $1 million versus 10% of my $50,000 is a very different number.
It is.
That's equity. That's what you call equity.
Okay.
Equity means we both get to see across the fence. You may be tall enough to see without any assistance, because that's typically what it looks like from a white perspective.
Mm-hmm.
But everybody else, I may need a stepping stool to see over the same fence.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
That's equity.
Okay.
Right? And that's what we're striving for, is equity. But we live in a capitalistic society.
Mm-hmm.
And what capitalism teaches you, if you really have studied and understand it, is the more that I contribute and make the government money, then the more they're going to benefit me by giving me tax breaks.
Mm-hmm.
That's why Donald Trump is rich,
right.
and why he stays rich despite generational wealth.
Right.
Because he keeps creating things that then allow him to utilize every loophole that the government creates.
Mm-hmm.
Again, I'm going back to family.
Okay.
If we create something
Mm-hmm.
that we can then pour into,
Yeah.
that we push out generationally,
Mm-hmm.
then we can take advantage of those same tax breaks.
Okay.
But we won't get our roots planted long enough to do that, aside from screaming to go vote for somebody Democrat or vote for this person. A lot of Black people that I know who have money vote Republican, not because they like Donald Trump,
Right.
because they benefit from the tax breaks.
Right.
They're not voting based on emotion. They're voting based on facts.
Right.
Yes.
So this is my gripe, though. This is why I say that, right? Because if you look at like the control that the government has with the tax monies and where they allocate these monies,
Mm-hmm.
different countries, of course, we know who's in charge right now, and all this money is going everywhere else except where it needs to be. It's like we don't have much control over that money anyway. So if I don't have control over where I want my money to go, so if let's say if the government is taking taxes out of my checks, I'm making $1 million, they take 30%, whatever it is. My 30% is going to be contributed in Germany. I mean, this was Ukraine war and all that crap. You know what I'm saying? And I'm like, well, if that's going to be the case, then you better off let me keep all my money, because I don't support that crap. You know what I mean? And that's just me. I don't support. I get it. There's a big war going on, the fuel and all that other stuff that's going on with that. That's fine. But you can't, where do we have the right to speak for ourselves as to where we want our monies to go as taxpayers?
Let me ask you a question.
Collectivism. If we don't put people who believe, because we're also doing the everyday actions in our everyday lives to push the people that we vote for and put in place, to hold them accountable, then there's this whole underlying dynamic. Every time Black people across the history of this country have created wealth, they've done exactly what you all said earlier. They've either martyred them as an individual or martyred us as a group.
Yeah.
Every time you've heard of these, we have cities that they have built lakes on in this country. That they put lakes on top of Black communities because they did not want them to survive. We have to stop when they kill one and they take from us and they put a lake on our city to kill us and disperse us. We gotta pop up somewhere else. We have this thing, and then the resiliency takes a break so long that before the next thing can pop up, it gets killed again. Then they have too much time to figure out how they're gonna keep us from doing that.
Because they're still dividing.
Right, because there's still this division within ourselves. I'm gonna stop right there.
That was good.
You good.
And once again, the number one thing I get from that is discipline.
Yeah.
I think another thing we gotta do, we gotta start doing too. It's like we really need to start researching who we really believe can make a difference, rather than someone throwing somebody in our face.
Okay.
I know y'all gotta move on.
Yeah.
I remember Killer Mike when he was advocating for Bernie Sanders. And I remember he said, I'm not sure it was a revolt or whatever it was he was on. He was like, if you really do not believe in war, you should vote for Elizabeth Warren. I think that was her name. She was maybe a Democratic candidate at the time. However, he was representing Bernie Sanders, and that is really just stuck in my mind of like, okay, we really need to start researching who these people are and what they represent.
And
learning how to thoroughly research, not just a skim like I Google and Google told me this. No, what's that step? And I think sometimes we don't know how to.
Right. Yes.
And so and not knowing how to or becoming overwhelmed, because while we have so much at our fingertips, right? it's so accessible, but it's so overwhelming.
Yeah.
Because you don't know how to navigate.
How many of us get $5,000, $6,000, $10,000 tax refunds and still have nothing to show for it? I'm going to tell you what I know, not what I heard, because I spent a lot of years before I switched careers in banking. And year after year after year after year, I would see people who look like me with these big tax refunds, waiting for them to drop, waiting for them to drop, and then not even 30 days, 60 days later, they have nothing.
No proper plan. No structure.
Like
no
nothing.
Discipline.
And you're back, and they're back the same week with the same problems in the same hole, and they have nothing to show for it. Imagine if you and everybody in your family who got $5,000 to $10,000 back, y'all collectively bought an apartment building. Not only could each of you have an apartment in that building and live rent free. If it's 10 floors, each of y'all live on the floor. And it's 10 of y'all, each of y'all live on the floor. You get control over that floor, over the tenants to keep not control, but you get to manage. You're responsible. You're super for that floor. You that way it spreads the work amongst everybody else. You all live rent free. You all make money. And guess what you get to be? You get to be a Republican if you want to affect the laws, because you're going to get the most tax breaks because you own something and you are contributing back, and you get to take advantage of all the loopholes that the IRS puts in place. Until we change our mentality. Right now, Biden about to pay off some people's student loans. That money, well, a lot of people screaming they weren't paying it to begin with. But for those of us who were paying it when we had to pay it, right? What are you going to do with that extra $200, $300, $400 a month that you have been paying? Can you now take that and bank it to create something for yourself, or even to get yourself out of debt for something else?
That's good. So let me go here, because for the sake of time,
You always say it on me.
For the sake of time, could we have a headline? We on a timeline. All right. So the first question was about the economy.
Don't look at me no more.
Right. This first question was about the economy. Let's see who was. Well, you guys didn't really give a full input, but this is the differences between the Democrats and the Republicans, their views. So the Democrats push for progressive taxation on citizens. This means that the higher a person's income, the higher their taxes should be. And the person that receives a lower income should be taxed less. They also believe that everyone should have a job that pays enough to raise a family. So so we know who the Democrat is in the room. So
I surely said it.
I'm messing with you. We going by views though. Okay, again, we can have these views.
Put a label on it.
We can have these views without actually being that. You know what I mean?
Right.
So Republicans supports cutting taxes whenever possible without hurting the overall budget in the nation. Republicans also support free market competition. Entrepreneurship, such as starting your own business and capitalism, is what they support. They believe that every American deserves the right to own, invest, build, and prosper. So they have a more stern system with the whole foundation.
They have a more fleshed out system.
I see there's a level of conflict in those definitions. So
you see a level of conflict?
I'm starting to know this.
I'm just saying.
I'm starting to know this.
I think that's why we had to have a discussion. So like there's again, we can vote blindly and say, well, I was born a Democrat and that's all I know, so this is all I'm going to do, without ever asking the questions. What's the difference? We're going to without actually questioning, am I really Baptist? You know what I mean? So the next question is this: healthcare, right? Should we skip healthcare? We got one.
Can I say something about that entrepreneurship thing?
Yes.
Yeah.
So I believe that you're right when you talk about entrepreneurship and the Republicans and what they feel about it. I think that it's becoming more modernized. I'm gonna be completely honest. I'm 50 years old, so I've seen a lot.
Right.
And I didn't see entrepreneurship amongst Black people blow up until Trump. Call it what it is. When Bush was there, when Bush was there, Bush is a Republican. It wasn't there.
It wasn't there, yeah.
When Reagan was there, it wasn't there. Reagan was about Reaganomics. He was about economics. When Bush was there, Bush was about wars. The first Bush. The second Bush was about defending his father. President Obama was about healthcare, which you're about to get into.
Healthcare,
Trump was about business.
Because he was a great businessman.
No, it's not real. He's really not.
Somewhat.
Well, he has good people. Yeah.
So he knows how to work the system.
He knows how to work.
So let me say, not a great businessman, but he knows how to work the system efficiently. He knows how to get what he wants.
Yes.
Maybe not great in that aspect,
Right.
but in knowing how to maneuver through the system.
Yes.
That part.
Yes, and that's what
But
manipulation
yes.
is, though. So that's what made him really good, because he's a great manipulator.
Mhm.
Absolutely.
He's
Yeah.
a great manipulator, and,
Mhm.
and that's not a positive, but it's the truth.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So the difference with healthcare is this. We're going to kind of skip through some of these. So the Democrats support, dealing with healthcare, support more federally funded healthcare programs during, we're talking about Obama, right?
Mm-hmm.
The Obamacare began a federally funded healthcare program called Obamacare, which ensures all citizens with access to affordable healthcare. Democrats also want to ensure that all citizens can pay for their healthcare expenses. That's, so that's the Democratic side. The Republicans support to keep healthcare private. Remember, their overall thing is to privatize everything. You know what I mean? So we're not going to let the public choose and make our decisions. The elites, those who already that have the money, it's capitalism.
But money can't drive healthcare, and that's where it's one of those things like separation of church and state. Nobody's health should be at the behest of the ability to afford.
Absolutely.
Your life should not be tied to whether I have enough money to
Right.
live or not.
Having said that, but it is in the Republic, and that's the downside of the Republicans.
That's
because
right.
because they want to say no, keep it private. Then if that's the case, keep my fucking body private. Why you all up in my body? Don't talk about healthcare if we're not gonna talk about healthcare.
Right.
Because you're gonna tell me what I can do with my body, but my health may be at risk. My mental, which is a physical, which is health, might be at risk if I keep this child knowing that I'm not ready, knowing that I'm not financially, emotionally, mentally, anything economically ready, knowing that I was raped, knowing that all of these factors. So when you start talking about healthcare,
you gonna get that one?
So now that you're talking about healthcare and we talking about my body, my choice. So the abortion side, no, not get it. I'm with her. Okay, we're rolling today. We're rolling on these enemies. All right. The Republican side is generally pro-life policies with the emphasis on promoting alternatives to abortion, such as adoption, immigration. Now, on the Democratic side, they're more pro-choice policies, which allows women to make their own choices when it comes to abortion. So, like you said, there's no separation in church of state. So now you're going from a party saying this is my belief to you now dictating what happens with my body. No pun intended.
And I mean, those are the differences. You have one that's pro-life, the other one's pro-choice.
Exactly.
So the one that's pro-life, they go back to the old school way of thinking, which now we have more people that are open to abortion. So then, Democrats kind of sway to that side a little bit more. You know what I'm saying?
Now wait, because now that weaves back into the marriage thing.
Okay.
When
so
we talk
about marriage,
Democratic and Republican, they're more so party views on it. That Democrats are generally supportive of same-sex marriages, although democratically remain largely divided on the issue and only support civil unions between a man and a woman. And Republicans support the Constitution Amendment to ban same-sex marriages. They strongly support civil unions between a man and a woman. So as we're weaving through this, it's almost like Democrats are always being progressive, and Republicans are always staying with that very strict conservative side, which now leads us to gun policy.
Okay.
Because that is one of the major things as well. Go ahead and tell us about it.
So Republicans want to limit the amount of gun control restrictions. They strongly support the Second Amendment, the right to bear arms, as well as the right to carry concealed weapons in public places. I don't have do I have the Democrat? Oh, it's up top. I kind of have it merged with the other stuff. It's kind of blended in. All right, so Democrats support policies that restrict and monitor gun controls. Generally, Democrats oppose the rights to carry concealed weapons in public places. So those are pretty much the differences, So,
but when it comes to that, when you're open carrying, right? And I'm pro open carry, especially in today's society, right? I had to get to that point, but I'm pro it. But it gets to the point where when we look at gun control and open carry, a lot of times it's inciting fear, because while a lot of our community will open carry something small, they over here with AR-15s. Remember when riots and stuff were going on in downtown Raleigh, they walking in subways with large guns?
Yeah.
No, you're trying to incite fear. You're not trying to incite. You're just trying to keep you or yourself or your body safe. You're trying to scare people.
It's definitely a very delicate topic.
Yeah.
Because I think, I'm conflicted with it, as probably a lot of us are, because we know for a fact you get hit the wrong with that thing. You out of here.
It's over.
Like it could be the smallest gun to the largest gun. You get hit with that bullet, it could be lights out.
Yeah.
However, I am, like you say, I'm kind of getting. It took a long way. I do accept the fact that I think people need to learn how to use guns.
Absolutely.
But at the same time, I don't know. I just feel like
I don't know.
Woo!
My child asked me to carry.
I'm not.
It's such a delicate topic, because a 14-year-old in one area can be 100% disciplined and ready to take that responsibility, but then a 14-year-old on the other hand, I'm just using 14-year-old as a level, but I'm just saying it's two different.
But when you think
worlds,
about community-wise, 14-year-old in another community, they're teaching them how to hunt.
Exactly.
They're well versed in it. 14-year-old in our area, they might be learning from their cousin and them shooting soda cans and might not really know what to do with what they have.
Right.
But even with the gun control, I think we're more or less talking about the adult aspect of it. But when kids can even see the issue, like Madison asked me to open carry. She saw her aunt open carry, so she asked her aunt Kat, she was like, well, why are you carrying? Like, why? And so she was explaining to her, well, this is for safety, and this is what this means, and this and this and this. She took it, she thought about it, she was like, Mom, I want you to do it. Because you live on the side, right? I want you to be safe. I feel safer if we had it.
Right. It's like a battle between retaliation and protection.
Correct.
So I lived in Hedingham, right? Literally on that.
I
I literally live on that
there.
street that happened. That whole killing happened.
Yeah.
Right? And that's why I'm like, I'm so like, but and then I'm going back to her, like you have to bring it back to home, because like you said, some people have structure because within the home that's what they were taught. So we have to bring it back, is what are we teaching our children? Like what type of structure is in the home? It goes back to broken homes. We need to heal in the home, heal our family, so that when we do step out, there's structure, so we have an understanding of why people are doing what they're doing. Like I don't agree at all with that little boy. Like that was no structure. So it's like I don't really agree with. It's like, okay, going to get your law. Going to get your certification. I feel like that should come with automatic training. Like you should, it should come with, okay, if you're approved, okay, now you have to go take a 2-week class, go to the gun range or whatever, take a core class of discipline and structure, self-defense class, so that you can know. Like, for example, fighting. We learn to self-defense and fight, as in we are people outside and fighting our cousins and stuff like you said, and then you have the other side of people that go and actually get discipline, structure, taekwondo, boxing, and there's structure within that, so you know when to and when not to use it. So I feel like it all comes down to structure, because I agree, yes, we need protection. I want to be able to bear arms, but is that safe for every person? Because
absolutely,
in my mind, and this is just me being realistic with myself, the person that I used to be, when I applied for my gun permit, I got denied, and I don't have no background, never been to jail, nothing. But that I believe that was God, because being the person I am, if I would have had that armor, who knows what, I had no structure. But now that I have the mindset that I have, when I go get my gun permit, I know that my gun will always be on me, but it won't be showing. It will be around me, but it won't be to scare or fear. It's to protect. You know what I'm saying? So it all comes down to, it does really all come down to structuring in the home, because that's a tricky topic.
No, that's good though. That's good.
It's very tricky, because that little boy was 14 years old.
He was 14.
He killed his brother. A cop. Like it's just that's very rational.
And then that bleeds over to society, because then you ask a question in, can you stop the glorification of certain dynamics when it comes to gun violence and things like that? Whether that's rock and roll, whether that's hip hop, but then like there might be like a whole different atmosphere of like the influence. Then because that could be dangerous too.
Yeah.
Where you kind of find, sometimes you listen to music to find some level of an identity.
Mm-hmm.
So all that's being marketed and pushed, or what at least you have access to, is certain things, and then like the communities you live in is kind of glorifying a certain aspect of life.
Right.
Eventually, it gets to a point where me being depressed and upset in a bad mood with whoever in the household, when I don't have a gun, it changes dramatically when it's a gun in the household.
Right.
Because then I got this life, I got this personality on my shoulder. The next thing you know,
now
so
I'm
I
trying
mean,
to
that
feel
might
this person.
right. So then, lo and behold, when you know it's there,
it's all strategic, because I think what was it? What small group it was? I think it was like the Filipinos had a war back in the early 1900s, and the people that they were fighting against, they used pornography to weaken them in order to win.
Wow. Okay.
The power of pornography distracts your mind and makes you weak. Beat your drum. All that extra stuff. So it's like,
I say wow because
you're not in that mind state of warfare.
Right.
If all you're focusing on is pornography, you know what I mean? So they lost because they strategically put porn everywhere. You know what I'm saying? And they lost the war. So I think it's the same thing when it comes to our society today with hip hop music. We're losing the battle because we're distracted. Yes. We're not talking about things like what my sister here talking L Boogie, right? We're not talking about what L Boogie talking about. You know what I mean? And what we're discussing here about politics and just this is foundation stuff right here. This isn't even anything deep. You know what I mean? This is stuff that we should know, for everyday conversations. You know what I mean?
Discernment.
Right. Distractions just decrease to discernment. Come on here now. Yeah. So I'm going to give you guys this last one, and then we're going to close out, and then we're going to let our brother Travis come close us out with a few of his poetry pieces. All right. So this last one I'm going to give you guys is the military. The difference between the Democrats and Republicans.
Wait. Thank you for all those that served. Thank you for everything that you have done for us. We know Veterans Day was yesterday.
Salute.
We appreciate you. Salute you. We thank you.
You sir. Yes, sir.
She was just like, no, but it don't make me militant, is what she said, okay?
She's militant, though, right?
I see the black beret. I just see it. You know what I'm saying?
She is militant. You serve. You had to serve.
She just looked like, don't play with me, though. But no, in all honesty, we want to thank you before we go into this part. But go ahead.
All right. So the military, Democrats strongly believe that the production of nuclear materials must stop. They would like to see that the nuclear weapons worldwide be safeguarded. Stated that we need to find it, catalog it, and lock it away. They would like to reduce the nation's budget on military defense spending, and they believe the peace is achieved through worldwide relationship building with other nations. So we see, again, where a lot of our money is going towards is peace, between us and other nations.
What is it, the action of peace?
Right. So the Republicans, on the other hand, believe that the key to protecting America is maintaining a strong traditional military. They believe that the country should have a strong and comprehensive defense system. Republican views on military are centered around the belief that strengthening the military will build a safer world and better guarantee for peace and gun control. What y'all think?
I will be more adamant about that if I had more numbers on or was more aware of the level of blacks that have died in military wars and then where they're being sent to. Because I guess, it's a whole motif of, I think overall it comes back to, we want, maybe some of us that want to buy into this system, but it always seems like the system is just badgering us and is getting over on us. Right. So it's almost like, I think, what was the movie, Glory? They sent it that battalion to the hardest, most hardest to overcome areas in the Civil War. It's always seemed like we're on the front lines. We're going to the hardest places. Yeah. So I just feel like those things, I understand it. I think we could benefit from that, but I think it got to go back to what the sister was saying. A reset. A reset needs to happen. Some healing needs to happen, and some overall conversation needs to happen because I have a lot of nephews now, and of course, I think we've probably all been through. You have to kind of sign up for the draft and things like that when you become a certain age. Like if something was to break out tomorrow, I might not go just because of age or whatever. But my nephew, 17, 18, 19, they go.
We at that age, huh?
Yeah, we at that age, but we might,
sit back
down. So I'm just saying, like, those are like, those I just feel like the military conversations are something that definitely needs to be happening. But I think this goes back to, like, we just need to figure out what exactly is going on.
Heal. That's what
we need some healing.
We need some healing.
I think we need to come together too, like on all fronts. As far as like, if we are indeed this Black community, let's really like iron some stuff out, and go over it.
And that's what I think this is going to help us do if more people tune into it, because we have an idea on what a Republican or a Democrat is or look like.
Right.
But until we actually get to the actual core meaning of it, you know what I mean? We really don't know for sure. So it's not about what a person looks like. It's about their core values and belief based on the system that already exists.
Right.
You see what I'm saying? So I got you. So if the system already exists, how are you going to contribute to the system to make it, to improve the system? They're not going to infiltrate the system because they're on that side for a reason. That's how I look at it. You know what I mean? You voting. You run to be a Democratic party because those are your core beliefs. A lot of them say, well, I'm here to change this and change, and nothing never changes. You know what I'm saying? So it's like, well, are you really against what you know what I mean? Like, where are we right now? So my whole thing is, if they're running for the position, they're there to hold up those belief values, and they're there to push those narratives and to continue so we can keep going the direction that we're heading, and they can stay on their agenda. That's how I see it. You know what I mean? That's my conclusion for all of this. You know what I'm saying? But you want to say something? Go ahead.
I will say I'm reading this book. It's called The 3 Questions. One thing that stuck out to me, what are the 3 questions, is who am I, what is love, and what is real? And what he said was, you have to know what is not real in order to know what is real. You have to know what is not love in order to know what is love. You got to know who you are not in order to know who you are. So I feel like that's what we kind of going through. Like, that's like right there. Like right there. Like, okay, I had an understanding of that's not me, but how can we change it to who I am?
Right.
Be you.
Just be you. Just be authentically you.
Facts.
My sister. You good?
Please say something.
She's like, he like, say it.
Please say it.
Scream out your chest.
Military, no thoughts. You good on that? You good?
I don't. I do have a number of family members who have served, a number of close friends who have served, who I consider family. I have a son who's at the age that could be drafted, but again, because he's on the spectrum, I don't know how that will play out because he's a senior in high school this year. Even though he has decided he does not want to pursue the military as a path, I still get lots of mail, lots of phone calls, lots of text messages encouraging him to join the service. And my daughter considered it when she graduated high school 5 or 6 years ago. And she wound up doing the ASVAB, but she wasn't able to place to get in. And honestly, I was kind of relieved. Not so much that whether I wanted her to serve or not. Again, I look at my children from the perspective as to who they are innately as individuals and as human beings. And then again, there's always that layer of concern because I'm a Black woman with Black children. And what that means for a young Black, naive, inexperienced girl in the military with all the things around the time that she was graduating that I was here happening to women in service. So it made me extremely concerned because again, we want our children to go out and be and feel protected. You shouldn't have to feel like you're protecting yourself from the people who are supposed to be protecting you. Right? And then when I think of all of the dynamics that my son faces, in addition to being on the spectrum, what that could look like for him. Because like she said, I sent my son through, he wound up doing what's called ninjutsu, right? Because I wanted him to learn controlled fighting. Because we had some situations with bullying at school, and that kind of gets off track. But my point to that is it's a really hard choice, especially when you have to feel it from the perspective of a parent who has a child going in, and you know who your child is versus you knowing what kind of mentality it takes for someone like that. Because I also know a number of these people have PTSD, and that PTSD shows up in how they're dealing with their families, and it has created many challenges, many challenges. And then generationally, what do they feel about receiving mental health services? Because all of these people are at different age spans, and some of them are a lot older when it wasn't the thing. Black people didn't get therapy.
That's true,
right? And so how do you honor wanting to do that and contributing, but at the same time honor the space of humanity and humanness, knowing that we're sending these people to commit atrocities and expecting them to come back unharmed and unscathed?
That's good word. Good stuff. Good stuff. We value your opinion here, man. That's good stuff. That's good stuff.
We want to thank y'all for coming out today, per usual, and coming and kicking it at the Kool Spot.
At the Kool Spot.
It's imperative that you all are here, that y'all are supporting the vision. We thank you. Limo, he puts a lot of hard work into it. I mean, I work a little bit too, but it's like he said, it's the baby. You know what I'm saying? He don't never clock out. Like, I'm like, what are you doing today? He's like, well, I was looking on this. I was doing this promo. I was doing this. I was like, so Limo, you gonna take a break? Nope. Right. He like, no, I'm on a truck. I'm doing blah blah.
I'm in grind mode.
But it's beautiful to see someone chase a dream, and it makes it easy to want to be a part of that. And having you all come and give the feedback and just kind of rock out with us means so much to both of us. And I appreciate y'all, even forming bonds and like being excited when I'm seeing you next time. Like, oh, okay, girl, let's go, let's talk.
Yeah.
Or, getting to see people more frequently, meeting new people. I mean, it's a beautiful experience, and it's an experience for me that feels like home. So I appreciate you all.
And I want to say this too, just for the mere fact that you guys showed up, and even the people that are watching live right now, I just have to say thank you too from the bottom of my heart as well, because all it takes is one person to reach. You know what I mean? And we served our purpose. You know what I mean?
Absolutely.
And I really do believe that. So it's like, do I get bothered sometimes about the numbers? Absolutely. But all it takes is just one to receive it. You know what I mean? And while we can interact like this, it means the world to me. So I was telling my sister here, I just met today, if you're doing a podcast, this is the thing right here. Interacting live with a live audience, you know what I mean? Get into that, because it feels so beautiful, and it makes everything that you work for the however long you had to put your content together, however long it took, it makes it all worthwhile just to sit here with you guys. You know what I'm saying? And I just want to say thank y'all, man, for the love and support, for real.
Thank y'all for having the platform. And like I just always say too, in my college days, one of the most popular party promoters right now in the Rotterdam area, I'm not sure if y'all know him, Brent City. He owns a living room.
I'm sure they know him.
I know you're talking about.
Yeah, on Main Street in Durham. Me and him went to NCCU together.
Right.
And I remember, like, when he first started throwing parties, 4 or 5 people in the club. Right. I mean, countless nights. And at this point now, he is by far one of the most prominent promoters around in this area.
That's good.
And even for me, like, being a poet from Warren County, I remember performing in front of 3 or 4 people in Warrenton. People didn't want to hear my voice.
Right.
And then, like, starting the her movement.
Okay, higher energy revolving.
Okay. Came up here with the love poems, and it popped off even more.
Okay,
so it's just like it happens, but I mean,
not to mention he puts on events too, guys. He's being real subtle.
So he's going to show
like he don't put on events. Okay.
But it's just I had to learn, and then thankfully, like, rest in peace to my grandmother, that patience is like a virtue. And sometimes it takes time for that stuff to happen. But when it pops, it pops. It pops.
Patience and long suffering go together. Remember, we talked about that, guys. Okay.
And timing. Like paying attention to the calendars and all that stuff. All that stuff. Like it pays off. So I definitely feel like it's gonna be a time for y'all where it's gonna be.
Oh yeah.
Like you shut the doors so that
we're looking at huge, ginormous venue spaces, all kinds of things.
Because it's happening.
We got a lot going on. We got a lot.
It's happening, and we can't wait to just wait for it all to come into fruition because we are definitely like each one teach one. All of us that here, all of us have something that we're great at. All of us have a business we're involved in, and it's not gonna. What do you say? Ain't no fun if the homies can't get none. Like ain't no fun if one of us come up and all of us. I mean, not in a nasty way, y'all. I got in. I know I started as a writing poet. That's not what I meant it. See, I'm here trying to be.
But with you, yeah,
I thought them both at the same time. I thought the positive and negative at the same time. I can't even lie.
Travis was like, I know you're free. I know you.
Double conscious.
It just worked. But yeah, like I mean, for us all to grow, for us all to have this like mindset, for us all to just get into our rightful orders in the places that we should be, in the rooms and the doors that will open, is going to take us just being present.
Yeah.
And so we are excited to see just all the places we're going to go. We want to introduce you to the dope brother, okay?
Yeah, man.
For one, y'all, this is probably my cousin in real life. Like, we joke all the time, but like, that's my Teddy P, okay? That's my cousin.
Teddy P.
That's my brother.
Get the camera set up. Go
Okay.
ahead. Go ahead.
I mean, I can sit down too.
Yeah. So Travis is gonna come up here and he is gonna just spit some hot fire. Like remember when it was making the band, it was like die line. I spit hot fire. That is what Travis King, and it is King with a Y. That's what he does. He's amazing. I love this brother, y'all. Y'all are in for a special treat. So I'm gonna let you have your seat.
All right. Anybody else want to perform?
That's abundance. Y'all heard that?
Anybody else want to perform before I go though? Like I mean, I know it's supposed to be an open mic, but I mean, I might be short for time though. Yeah, so
let you close out.
Got you.
2-3 pieces. How many?
Okay. I got a lot, but I mean, I could do like two, 3, maybe 2. Yeah.
Between 2 and 3.
All right.
Go ahead. Just go.
All right. I got you.
Go ahead.
All right. I'm sorry I used you. I'm sorry I misled you. I'm sorry you were so green and made violent rainbows to show my appreciation. I'm sorry that you didn't see our heartbreak coming sooner. I'm sorry for wasting your ears, your devotion, your data and minutes. When I was indecisive about you, I'm sorry to have left the blueprint of future women that I knew were addicted to. I'm sorry to add to your misery. I'm sorry for making you my salvation, so I had to crucify you. I'm sorry for making you my salvation, so I had to crucify you. Whenever I felt uncomfortable of your advancement, I'm sorry for the other men I put before you, even when I asked you to put me in front of your mother. I'm sorry that you spread yourself thinner than a Nintendo graphics in doing so. I'm sorry for fueling your despair that filled my gluttony by eating your energy to your heartbreak. I'm sorry for stealing your heartbeats. I'm sorry for stealing your smile and using your teeth as stepping stones to my ego. I'm sorry for not wanting to compromise, but wanted you to meet me halfway. I knew you were not attractive enough for me, but handsome enough to put yourself in the belief of our relationship on the mantle. I'm sorry that okay. I knew you were not attractive enough for me, but handsome enough to put your belief of our relationship on the mantle. I'm sorry I put my lips around it, kissing it with scarlet lipstick, leaving the imprint on it. I'm sorry for leaving it and not remembering where I dropped it and expected you to find it and pull it out of the jungle of another woman. I'm sorry that I chased your compassion like a pride. When I had already tarnished your pack, you became my pack, but I warned you. Yes, I warned you. But I'm sorry for you not being so damn vulnerable. I'm sorry that I became another woman to your failed bucket list. I'm sorry for being so brutally honest when you so truthfully spared my feelings. I'm sorry you resisted at calling me bitch so many times that the word is forever tattooed on the tip of your tongue. I'm sorry that your God has failed you. And knowing that the way that you value women more than all the friend zones that have entombed you, and you still find ways to prey on the apex of your love poems, I'm sorry that your God has failed you. But I'm not sorry for delivering the message, because I needed you for my reaping. You are our rebound, and I see that your flesh has been sacrificed, cooking the good man out of you. But as long as you know, we will find you again, being the cancer to your insane heart. But you will repeat this cycle. And I'll be waiting, ready to have you any way we please.
You talk about how we went in from we and you and I was like, wait a minute, because I'm getting 25 different double entendres at the same time.
Get ready, because I'm doing agape next. All right. Maybe it was meant for me to be in love with you forever. Perhaps it was meant for me to mourn for you while you're still alive. My gift is that every woman after you was compared with you. My curse. All of them may pale in comparison. My muse. I'm not sure if I will evolve into the man I need to be, but I need you to believe in me like your hands when you pray for the strength of making good decisions. I want to know things about you that God doesn't know. Like the sins you are too afraid to pray off that has made you the beautifully flawed aces you are today. I will thirst for you after tomorrow breaks and be hydrated by the wet dreams I have of you in the present. You are my manifested irony. As me and God has not talked in so long, but if you grant me your submissive funding, I will be determined to make you my new Deuteronomy, preparing you for the forthcoming sixth extinction, as you will become the world's next Eve, and civilization will float to the vessel you have left unguarded, but learn from the erosion of living in harsh winds, leading to teaching the next generation that breathing is the first step of fulfilling an everlasting forecast of milk and honey. And I ask for forgiveness with this cardinal confession, as my divine desires are hell-bent on finding out what part of your devilish structures of heaven sent. I want to taste your failed relationships.
Rewind.
I'm starting to get used to that. Leading the teaching the next generation that breathing is the first step of fulfilling an everlasting forecast of milk and honey. And I ask for forgiveness with this cardinal confession, as my divine desires are hell-bent on finding out what part of your devilish structure is heaven sent. I want to taste your failed relationships and swallow how you've been holding grudges, that have eviction notices on the walls, that have witnessed these fallout, hearing the pillow softly touching the floor as formal sensual sentences has turned into deeply wounding words that dry out emotions, and I will become intoxicated from the caution tape that you left sloppy. Leaving the crime scene open for forensics, ballistically tasting your thoughts of me, grinding out your insecurity by thrusting inward, searching for your confidence. If I can dive into the deepest part of your ocean, I can forever alternate the climate change of your atmosphere, reviving the nature of your womanhood, holding steady for the continuance of a blue sky, solving your manslaughter by revealing all the times I've seen my own palms cry, due to not having someone that needed to be held until now. I want to inhale the juices from your essence, and like I needed for my existence of tasting your G-spot, I want to devour your mind and mentally work out so your personality will become my amino acids. Leave with me with enough protein to handle your bad days. I hope then that your heart will follow suit. Like the tuxedo I will wear as you walk down the Alcatraz of prosperities with nothing certain of the future, as each beat from your heart is your past, present, and future tense. And I see the equivalence as tears hold your wedding dress accountable. Take your responsibility for the distance of letting the world see you vulnerably in love, as unconditional love often shapeshifts into the evils of currency and the buying and selling of dreams. But your skin is golden enough to buy the freedom of my ancestors. You never dreamed that the zeitgeist could provide you a culture without Bible and his language, orchestrating fuel to harmonize your rhythmic soul, while holding your broken foundation with the miseducation of your big being or your big bang. I leave you with such bliss that nothing even matters at all, but still take notes in secrecy between the space gaps of your supernovas, utilizing the dark matter of your ever-expanding universe. I want to be your omega. It's the I can never finish. It's like two more stanzas. It's the urge from an alpha like Phoenix force, with no gray areas to leave in question. This is cyclops skill or tunnel vision, barring this potency with rosemary, X-Fifth, the sunglasses, and with my eyes do indeed open, my optimal vision will wish to have God's power to put you physically at my deathbed, as my last image I have on earth will be the first sight I see in the afterlife. You are the reason I know infinity exists. And thus, we become greater than the oblivion of our everyday struggles. Come with me. I can make humanity worth enduring again.
Wow.
That's it.
Wow.
I don't know why you clap for some steps.
Yo, this faint cry, you know, deliver a rose, your crush, whatever.
You said the what with the rose?
Huh?
The what?
None.
You said what with the rose? What you said?
I said deliver a rose to your crush.
Right.
You got time for one more? Yeah. I don't even know what to do after that though.
I don't know what to do after that.
You want to do one more?
All right, I do puppet.
We got time.
All right, I do puppet. That's be the last one. Yeah, okay. All right. Puppet version 2.0. That's the name of it now.
Let's go.
All right. No one had any idea that mental health will become fashionable. I wish I could wear my suicide notes in high school like throwback jerseys. I hope you and your reflection never have a disagreement that will force your mirror to pick a side. Travis King.
Woo.
I have a tendency to pick women who are already taken. Whether I was aware or not, it always seems that Eve comes too early for our eating to commence. This misfortune can be explained by these strings that have become chain-like to me, constructing my most obscure movements like timidness, awkward posture, and stillness. They even refrain me from approximate aggressiveness, holding me captive to these fantasies I too often quickly develop. Beauty is indeed in the eye of the beholder, but I turn beauty to obsession, constantly being controlled by cerebral attachments. My reward is often curse-dripped in the formality of being submissive in forms that are unknown. Perhaps my primal urge has mutated my orchid of ill-informed spirit animals or personas into an omnivore spirit animal, conflicted upon textures of the flesh. I want to be cut down so badly, yet love so deeply how these strings morbidly age back, never seeking rehab to break malice cycles. The internal tomb and chance of being with hollow carnivals. There's no pixels in these eyes, no allegory from my cave to Plato, and my nose actually grows when I speak truth. But if you were to ever glimpse the experience of my soul, you will see that it nooses a mirror with the voice echo saying there aren't any strings on me, only to reveal the conditions we place on ourselves. Why am I constantly letting the existence of not being in love control me like fairy tales that mimic folklore that hasn't survived society nor science tell me? Perhaps because I'm addicted to unhappiness. Like spiders that create a web of lies, 8-legged insanity, making the same obstacles over and over again. My honest definition of arachnophobia, hoping to catch something with equal misery, repeating the inner cycles of my family's failed marriages, but being deceptive to any her. Playing house in a broken apartment, renting out the best years of our lives, young and restless without mortgage. So no wonder I question if I'm a man big of wood and splinters, because all I see is a wooded being in any her's reflection I seek. We all know that water and oak often sponge together like an oxymoron, breathing dummy, waiting to crash into a wave of droughts that dust. I now know why my tears never seem to quench my layers of skin, as I find myself both hollow and defensive from growing out of adolescence but never entering manhood. I feel so inadequate in my hours of peace, often spending my time learning another language, just so eating hers equator can merge my hemispheres, controlling my tsunamis and making the middle patches of my hurricanes. I spin in either direction for you. I can be the mouth to your shadow. I can die as a raindrop and your heat can resurrect my spirit like evaporation. I can find the silver linings in the lines you reveal are always attached to me. Possess me however you want. Move me like daylight savings so I can work in overtime for your luxury. Exhaust me like currency. Exchange my limbs for your transparent acts. You cut me down. And pick up my strings to abolish me into a false liberty. You know that I know that I'm foolish. And you know that I like being controlled. As being a puppet is my truest form of freedom. All right.
Ladies and gentlemen, Teddy P.
Teddy P. You know what I'm saying? I don't meet this in back.
Say what now?
You heard what I said.
Nah, I didn't hear what you said.
No.
All right, anybody else want to go?
I do have a phone, but if we got time, I mean, you said we got time.
You got
It's
one?
not. Yeah, I got one.
We actually out of time, but go ahead. If you have one, go ahead.
Wanna go?
Go ahead.
Go, baby.
Okay. It's called expression. Okay. Expression. How do you express? What do you love? Does music speak to you? Art, books, music, affection, vocalizing your voice, expression. Who are you? What do you stand for? What do you love? What makes you happy and finds you peace? Do you watch the sunset go and stare at the stars in the sky? What is your form of meditation? Realize every question I ask you. As you sit back and think of all those verbal and nonverbal ways to express yourself, that's what makes you better as a person. If you understand yourself, you can understand others, even the world.
Rewind. Understand it.
Okay, gotcha. If you understand yourself, you can understand others, even the world. Expression. How do you speak? My body language? Ask yourself, how do I speak? My body language, my self-care routines, the words I speak to myself. How do I express myself to others? It's peace and healing to know who your best version of self is. What is your favorite color? What drives you to wake up every day? You know that you make the decision whether you live the happiest life imagined. What's stopping you from pushing your dreams and wishing in your wishes as you always desired? Who told you that you couldn't have those things? Because finances definitely don't make you, you make the finances. What keeps you smiling?
Word.
Okay, magnified.
Yes,
Magnifier. Yeah, when she read it to me, I just felt like it was bouncing. Like it was just like a boop, boop, boop. It was like a nice little bounce to it. All right. Yeah, can I close this out with a poem? Y'all cool with that? All right. It's called affirmation. Affirmation. I've learned to stop falling in love with potential. See, projecting perfection in human form on those yet in infancy format. Chasing the unobtainable, falling in lust with the broken, transcending day to day with thoughts of forever. I must be fucking deranged. Affirmation. What the fuck, girl? Pull it together. I can't blame them for searching for something that feels like home. When they're displaced, don't you go back to basics like home? Don't you go back to basics when feeling wounded? Internal instinction, you search for your roots. Affirmation. You're only responsible for self. It becomes difficult to want to love our Black men with open hearts when we end up mothering them with our thighs. Affirmation, you can't heal them through your Yanni verse. I've learned to never apologize for loving hard or being intentional. I've learned to never feel less than for trusting a man or believing a well-kept dog, chasing skirts, returning with fleas. Fuck your way through it. Affirmation, girl, I told you, you're more than the liquid gold you possess. See, he learned to be a man. He needed to feel his way through it. Fuck his way through it. Divide thighs and tease his way through it. I was taught to be womb man. I needed to love my way through it. Take broken pieces and make masterpieces, to take glass shards as reminders that I still feel while shielding you from it. I was taught that my womb was space for your seeds, that when you were done sowing your oats among the land, that you come back and bless me. I never was told to enjoy the essence. I was told to be wet nurse while keeping hot meals in tow and keeping your bed warm. I was taught to lose self in you, but I deserved a bit of that too. See, what if man was created to crave me? Me as in your motherly figure, like the cipher, like the sculpting of superhero mirrored. Affirmation, you're more than your nurturing spirit. Affirmation, love given outwardly should be projected inwardly. Thoughts about how I want it to be loved. I want it to be loved in the most juvenile way possible. I desire to be loved without words, just hands closed together, fingers intertwined. Love me like the equivalency of a baby, strong enough to make facial muscles forsake self and joyful laughter escape. Love me in the warmth, adore me with your gaze. Love me till you're scared to look away, scared to feel the void of your absence. Affirmation is on the way, release. Love me like the past Like, love me past the honeymoon stage. Love me out loud, but not loudly, but just subtly, consistently. Love me till love radiates through your smile. Love me like the dimple in your cheek. Shyly, then uncontrollably. Love me with the same zeal that you love hard for life. Love me like the kisses on grandma's cheeks or like your mama's hot water cornbread. Affirmation, what you want is here. Love me like the double serving of mac and cheese. Savory like the smell of Thanksgiving dinner. Be the prize at the end of my wish list. Show me by finishing my sentences. By beating me to service. Affirmation, I love me. Love me strong, love me long, love me aloud, because I'll love you relentlessly. I'll give you pieces of my heart, and if we can stitch mine and yours to make a whole, I'll love you until we become the reflections of each other, until we become the pieces to mend broken segments of one another. I'll love you as long as we decide to love without end. For you and I can be a spear wrapped in authenticity, tied in peace, highlighted by God to show the world that Black love is effervescent, vivacious, and irreplaceable. I choose we. Affirmation, I've learned to love all of me in the deepest valleys, the nooks and crannies. Say it with me. I love you because you're just enough. Thank you.
Wow.
Good. Yes. Wow. Yes. That was deep. Yeah.
Thank you, guys. Thank you. You going? No. So we got somebody else we got to work on for next time, guys.
Yep.
I got it. All right, y'all. Well, we want to thank y'all for coming and kicking it at the Kool Spot. Thank you for tuning into the podcast. Make sure you're following us on our social media handles. They are scrolling down at the bottom of the screen. Thanks for all the artists that came through. We love you. Peace and love. And we'll check y'all next time. Later.
That was beautiful. I want to thank y'all. I was very nervous. That was my first time ever doing that.
You did amazing.
Okay, I talk on TikTok and stuff.
I am. Okay.
I done popped my